Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Disturb America Tonight with Payson Williams. Starting off tonight, a couple of great topics here, from the president's health to the impending doom of World War III that looks like it's getting ever so close, and whatever the hell we feel like it. Again, we are again for another weekend with casual weekends. We normally would say casual Saturdays, but since it's Sundays, I was quite busy yesterday. For those of you that joined us on the other show that I host and moderate for Intrigue Live, we had a really great conversation. Lasted much longer than I wanted it to go. Rhett, I want to thank you for being here tonight. Let's start
You
things
said
off by
5 hours?
talking. Yeah, it was 5 hours, 5 hours and
That's
15
way too
minutes.
long, bro. Not even Joe Rogan
And
does
and
that.
and believe it or not, that's not the longest period of time that I've been on the show. The longest period of time that I've actually done a recording session was with Jay when we were doing a Growing in Christ episode. We did it for almost 6 hours, and that was the
People don't
longest
have
one
that
that
kind
I've
of
been on.
attention span. I'd be surprised if anybody watched it all the way through.
Well, I mean, when you make those long form shows, I don't think anybody ever watches it all the way through. I kind of have it rolling in segments throughout the day because I go back and watch all of our episodes. Um, you know, because got to be our best customer. Give us some clicks for the ad revenue, but um, let's go ahead and start here. I don't know if you've been watching this or paying any attention to it, but it brings up more questions about what's that?
It's nice, isn't it? It's an elephant figurine.
Is that going to be part of your
Glass.
glass menagerie?
I got a lot of elephant stuff. I've been collecting elephants since I was a kid.
Is it a
See that
Republican
one up
thing or
there? No, it's just I like
just
elephants.
just just elephants? I'm actually admiring the katana you have back there. Is that a elephant too?
This one's creaking.
That one looks. I thought that one was a dinosaur for a moment.
No, he just sits up there. One of his arms is broken. Anyway, let's go on.
You should really consider getting yourself a crown, uh, or get yourself something. Chief administrator, the chancellor.
I don't view
Uh,
myself as a king, though.
yeah, you don't have nearly enough narcissism in you to be a good co-host to me.
A good co-host. You mean a king? I don't
Oh,
like the
I know.
title king because it's so tired. Like I'd rather if I was going to be a head of state, I'd rather be an emperor.
You want to usurp my authority. Is that it? You want to be higher than I am.
No, I just like the title. I like the word. I wouldn't
I,
really
I
want to be
I
that either.
actually I actually like the root of emperor much more. It just sounds better to say it in Latin, imperator. Man, that sounds so much better.
Yeah, dude.
Uh,
A lot of the Roman titles are so cool, like centurion,
oh yeah,
a
those are awesome.
praetor, praetorian guard. Which, speaking of praetorian guards, you know, emperors usually weren't hereditary, and anybody who looks through the history will see that these
Oh yeah,
emperors, most of them weren't related to each other. Um, later in the late stage empire, like of course before the empire fell, it got to the point where the Praetorian Guard picked the emperor because if they didn't like the emperor, they could easily take him out of power. So
yeah,
they
like what
became
they
their
did
own
to
sort of
Caesar.
deep state. They became like the FBI, like the deep state we have today.
Yeah, and
Very
that
much
brings
like it.
us to modern times. So here's the big issue that's been going on. I don't know if you've been paying any attention to it. I've been seeing a couple of drops here and there. Joe Biden, on February the 16th, if I'm not mistaken, had a skin graft removed off of his chest that was a cancerous polyp that had developed on his chest. Now it
Oh
was
yeah, that's
tested and
nothing.
it was cancerous. They did find, and now they're saying that he's okay. But the issue remains for Biden. He's going to be 86 if he runs again, and
At
um,
the end,
but at the end he'll be 86 if he runs again and is elected. And the biggest issue with that is Biden's family genealogy. has a strong propensity for this type of skin cancer that he's tested positive for, and we're seeing uh,
I think
that
he'd be 82, wouldn't he?
going into
6,
if because
82 at the end.
he'll be 82 at the end of this administration, but if he runs again, he'll be 86 at the end of the next one. If he's elected,
No, I'm talking about Trump, not
Trump,
Biden. Trump would be
yeah,
82 in
yeah,
2030.
Trump
Or I
is
mean
also
2020, 2028.
Up there, and that's just the reason why age I think is such a big issue, particularly because of their health. Now, we can take a look at the differences between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in their health categories, but the fact of the matter is, Trump is old too, and regardless of the fact that he's not been testing positive for cancers, he still has relatively good health from what we've been able to see.
Okay.
He's at that age where anything can happen, and Joe
I want
Biden
to
is up
address the
there
skin
right now
cancer
too.
thing. Um, so skin cancer is probably like the most like insignificant form of cancer there is because they're real easy to remove and they usually don't spread. If it's just like a small melanoma or whatever, it's usually not that serious. My grandfather had a couple before he died, um, and that's not how he died. But he did die young at 64, and eventually he ended up developing prostate cancer, but it was unrelated. It's still not a good sign to be developing skin cancer, but it's not like something that's really that serious, like brain cancer
Yeah,
or
but I
something like
mean,
that.
among Joe Biden's other litany of health related incidents that we've been seeing
Yeah,
lately.
yeah, obviously. And I remember that time that he was in Delaware, or was it Pennsylvania or wherever he was, that he said it's the reason I and so many damn other people I know had
Yeah,
cancer.
he said
It looked like
because
it
of
looked
all the
like he was in
carbon in
front
the
of a
air
dump.
and the oil slicks on the roads, the oil gets on your
Yeah.
window. That's the reason why we all got cancer. But now here
And
comes
because
Joe.
the oil, yeah, the oil slick on the window caused him to get cancer
The oil, yeah,
because
that's
he was so
exactly what
pissed
it
he couldn't
was.
see.
The oil slick on the windows caused the cancer because apparently Joe just likes to go out and lick oil slicks off of the windows. Or I don't know how he would get skin cancer. That maybe he's just rubbing it into him to his body.
Didn't
But
it look like he was in front of a dump or some trash heap?
he was a little like I think he might have been in Baltimore or in Philadelphia. But you know
I
what?
thought it was Delaware.
Philadelphia, Baltimore, Delaware, pretty much the same thing as a trash heap. Let's be honest here.
Well, yeah,
So
pretty
it
much.
could have been either one of those. But I just
He's had
find
it before. He's had it before, so that's probably what he was referring to whenever he said that.
yeah,
This
he
is
has
not the
had
first time.
the same type, and it's really benign. But because he has a propensity for it, and it comes back. I mean, we saw what happened with Ruth Bader Ginsburg before her death, with her battling her recurring cancers that come back quite frequently. We're seeing who was that? What senator was it that had the brain cancer? That had
John
it
McCain.
removed. Yeah, McCain, and
No, he
then
didn't have it.
now
He died from it.
oh, there was another one, but then and then now there's that other. Is he a senator or is he a House representative who has cancer right now on the Democrat side? I can't remember his name. He's wearing a bandana because his hair because he's
I
balding
don't
or
know.
something now. But he's also got a form of cancer, and it brings into the consideration of there is a minimum age that you need to be in order to run for federal office. Do you think that there needs to be the consideration of a maximum age?
Elon Musk posted that on Twitter a couple of months, like sometime last year, and that was the first time I ever heard anybody even mention it. And I think he was doing it actually to troll Bernie Sanders, but the point still remains. It actually is a good idea, considering that we have all these octogenarians wanting to be in office for forever.
Well, and not only that, but do you know how destabilizing it would be in modern American times for a sitting president to die in office? We haven't had that happen since JFK.
Jamie Raskin
Jamie
is the guy
Raskin,
you
that's
were
the one
talking
who has
about.
cancer. Yeah.
Yeah, Maryland. Yeah, well, I mean, JFK's assassination, that was modern times. To us, it seems like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. So, no, it's not inconceivable. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like it's actually a pretty realistic assumption to make, especially with Biden.
I've been assuming that Biden was going to croak before the
I'd be
end of his
surprised if he
first
doesn't
term.
die in office.
I I'm still up there thinking that he'll probably
We
croak
still have
before
another 2 years to
2024.
go.
Yeah. Uh, Not that I'm wishing it upon him, but now we also have Dianne Feinstein is in the hospital battling shingles, which for elderly people, if they were always, they're always telling us all about the vaccine nonsense, and it seems as though uh, Dianne Feinstein might have not paid attention to
Jesus
that litany
Christ,
of
dude.
commercials
You know
that
what?
always tell old
She will
people to
be
get the shingles
90
vaccine.
years old in 3 months. She'll be 90.
You know what
This is
this you
getting
know what this
absurd.
you know what the sad thing about that is? She was not going to retire, but her campaign staff, accidentally leaked to the public that she was planning to retire. But
So she had to.
when she was questioned about it, I think it was on MSNBC. When she was questioned about it, they asked her, "Are you planning to retire?" And she said, I've made no announcements on that yet." But then the MSNBC journalist who was asking her the question pressed her and said that your staff already came out and posted on Twitter that you're planning to retire. And then she's like, "Well, I guess if they said I'm doing that, I guess that's it."
That's problematic, isn't it? She
It's
just she either she totally forgot or no one told her.
either she totally forgot, or what the most problematic thing about it is that somebody's telling her what to do, and that they were going to use her body to push agendas. Like, for example, John Fetterman is in the hospital right now because he's potentially going to face another stroke. He's had such depression.
So
For,
look, I don't know how true this is, but I actually saw a Twitter post of it was somebody on Twitter, somebody in the political space that's verified, said that somebody has leaked to them that John Fetterman was actually brain dead,
I
and
wouldn't pass it.
no one knows.
I wouldn't put it
But
past it because John
they want
Fetterman.
these people to die in office so they can replace them with whoever they want.
Oh, they don't even have to die in office because we saw that in the election. They could die during the election process and they'll still get voted for.
Yeah.
Vote
I
D no
wonder what.
matter who. I guess we can
I
extend
guess
that
that
D
seat's still
from
vacant then.
Democrat to dead. You know, vote D no matter who, even if D means they're dead.
Well, I
And
mean,
I
the
haven't
party
heard
as a
anything about
whole
that. I
is
assumed a
technically,
special election would happen for that vacancy, but I haven't heard anything about it yet.
yeah, there's going to be a special election. So I guess the seat's just vacant right now. I don't know. It can't. Isn't that wasn't that in the House?
Yeah, it was in the House.
I don't think there's any vacancies in the House right now. I don't know.
Let's find out. The It's a Pennsylvania. I'll just do PA. Pennsylvania House vacancy. Wait, no, it's going to make me think I'm doing uh, something else. Let me see. Pennsylvania
Pennsylvania congressman who died.
Congressman.
Okay, dead congressman.
Yeah, let's just do that. Pennsylvania dead congressman. Let's see. Um, Democrats he was reelected in the landslide, so we know about that. But that was
Anthony.
Anthony Tony DeLuca. And did they have a re-election yet? He died on October 9th. And
Okay.
let's see. This article here isn't
Oh yeah, the
showing.
election already happened.
It did. They had the
February
special election
7th.
already.
February
So it
7th.
happened February 7th. Okay, so that one did happen, but it just goes to show that it doesn't really matter to these people. All they care about is getting a body in there, which makes you wonder who is in control.
That's what I'm saying. The Democratic Party is essentially a reanimated corpse because they actually did used to have principles. They used to stand for the working man. That's now the Republicans. Uh, basically all they are is a puppet body being controlled by multinational corporations.
I argue that the
Remember,
Democrat Party
you
is
remember
never
that
for
the
the working
Illuminati,
man.
people always just talk about the Illuminati this, and most people don't use that term anymore, but some people still use it. It doesn't matter what term you use, they do exist, but
Yeah,
they just don't call themselves they don't
the
call themselves
shadow
that.
government. You know what they call themselves? They call themselves the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
That's what they call themselves. That is the
Yeah,
Illuminati
that's their
of
public
our
face,
time.
yes.
And if you pay close attention to what they say and what they speak about, they are telling you the plan. And the murder of millions, if not billions, is part of the plan. Bill Gates has been talking about depopulation for a long
I
time.
suppose it's well, you could think of it as murder. It's more like murder by proxy, because a lot of this is going to, obviously, the people in Bill Gates's opinion specifically, but not just his, is that the places that are having the most rapid population growth are the places that can least handle it, which is the third world, which is a lot of these countries, they can't supply them their own food. They don't have enough resources to support themselves. So in our
Not to
modern
mention
globalized
fertile
world,
agricultural
they've been,
environments.
hold on, I'm not done. Let me get this thought out. They've been relying on the support of developed countries, and due to the globalization we've had, they've been able to cripple along. But since that's going away, these places in the third world, you know, they're all going to die. I mean, a lot of them, 90%. I don't, that might be a bold prediction, but it's starvation that's going to kill most people, not actual murder. But you could still think of it as murder
Well,
because the supply chain's being disrupted.
not only that. I mean, when you take the starvation is one of them, but when you take a look at the national disasters in our areas, these are all man-made natural catastrophes. This has nothing to do with climate change, as they would have us try to believe. It has nothing to do with oil. It has nothing to do with energy or the cost of energy, even though the cost of energy is rising way too fast. It has everything to do with artificial demands that have been set by the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization as well, with their faulty ability to handle many of these global catastrophes. We take a look at what's going on in Colorado, for example. They're moaning and griping about why they're always on fire during the summertime. They have no water, and you dammed off the Colorado River. It's been dammed for over 30 years. The reservoir is busted. We've been telling them that it's going to dry up for 30 years. And now that it's finally there, they're like, "Oh, where's the water? You dammed it up. You're we're creating our own problems, and then we're trying to blame it on climate change, and we're trying to blame it on global warming, when these issues and problems are all man-made problems that have nothing to do with environmental factors. We could have found a way to live in those areas without having to drastically change the environmental landscape. And now we're seeing even more so with companies, well, I won't say companies, with people like Bill Gates purchasing all of this farmland and agricultural industries within the United States and other countries that are purchasing these lots of farmland and then refusing to allow farmers to produce on those lands. Even the Biden administration has gone so far as to tell farmers to stop producing as much as they were doing before, causing an artificial food shortage. And that's going to cause prices to rise. It's going to cause the bottom rung of the economic ladder to virtually be forced to die off, because they won't be able to afford to continue paying the necessary costs to survive in a civilized society.
Yes, it is absolutely pretty much actually fair to say all the problems that the globe as a whole is facing right now, all of them are man-made. Um, well, besides situations where you have those earthquakes in Turkey, although some people have uh, posited conspiracy theories that those earthquakes were somehow caused, because there's not a whole lot of evidence to back that up, and I'm not saying I agree with it, but some people think that even the disasters that seem natural may not be. In some cases, that could be true, but it's because all the Western countries, with us included, like 2 or 3 days, I think it was 2 days before the earthquake, withdrew all of their foreign emissaries. Everyone,
Yeah, but
like
we have
they
ways of
knew or
detecting
something.
that.
Well, you can't always detect how bad an earthquake's going to be.
I don't
In
know
areas like that where they
how
happen all the time.
I don't know how close to the date it has to be, but we do have ways through the seismographs have been able to detect earthquakes and sufficiently warn people of it beforehand. But how close to the time frame you have
If
to
we could
be,
do that,
I
then
don't
not.
know.
If it was really as straightforward as that, then all those people wouldn't have died. Earthquakes aren't always predictable. We
True.
just know if you're in a region that's seismically active, you should probably have that in mind. But you know,
And not to mention
if we really knew ahead of time, we could have evacuated people, but that didn't happen.
not to mention
Besides
that
the ambassadors.
the the volcanic eruptions and stuff that's been happening, which let's be real, there people are going to blame it on climate change. These volcanoes have been erupting for hundreds of thousands of years. Some of them have been erupting continuously for over 100,000 years and have not stopped erupting. And these people are living in areas where there are highly active volcanoes. You have to expect that to happen, and you can't blame that on climate change or the environment changing or global warming. That's just a part of natural of the Earth's natural ability to
Who is
produce more
blaming
land.
who's blaming earthquakes and volcanoes global warming?
You know exactly who they are. The AOCs of the
I mean, I
Democrat
haven't
Party.
personally heard anyone pose that argument. I try to avoid these people because that's a ludicrous thing to say, that seismic activity has anything to do with, you know, CO2 in the atmosphere.
If they can find a way to do it, they do it. And
Well,
the sad thing.
I don't
Go
put
ahead.
any value in. At this point, global warming is not a scientific issue; it's a political issue, and
Uh oh,
you know,
I missed a call
that's
from
the
my
reason
brother.
why I honestly, well, when I had my interview with Brittany for Politically Provoked,
Oh yeah, we don't do that show
you know
anymore.
where she'll ask, what topics would you prefer? What would you avoid? Whatever. I think we had pretty much the same answer. I said almost anything, except I don't really care to talk about climate change because it's not worth debating. It's really
N-
not.
and the science about it is incomplete. In many cases, faulty or just completely made up.
The only thing that people need to know is that at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, CO2 concentration in the atmosphere was about 280 parts per million. Right now, it's about 406. Okay. But the medieval warm period was warmer than now. And carbon, even though it's 406 parts per million, it's still lower than it's been in 600 million years.
Exactly.
And,
They exclude that
back when it
part.
was 1 to 2,000 parts per million, life was abundant. There was no runaway greenhouse effect. So honestly, there's nothing to talk about.
They exclude that part, and all of the time when they're doing their things. And
Oh, yeah, I
and
know.
the, and the sad thing is, I love David Attenborough. I can sit there and listen to David Attenborough on BBC all day, but even David Attenborough has to follow into the same regime of talking about the climate change and the warming polar poles and all of the sea levels rising and there's animals are dying off because of things and blame it on human beings. Now, it would be one thing to blame the death of many of these animals on the pollution in the waters, from toxic runoffs to the plastic island of all this junk that is
Yeah,
discarded
the
into the
Pacific
ocean.
garbage patch.
That would be one thing, but to say that these deaths are as a relation to the heating of the climate because of anything that man's done, our carbon footprint on this planet accounts for less than what 2% of what the Earth does every day.
Yeah. So it's not ridiculous to assume that it's possible that odd beings can have an effect on the environment and the climate. As far as releasing really a small amount of the CO2 that's trapped in the Earth's crust, it doesn't really amount to very much at all.
Did you
It's,
see
you know,
the
the
report?
warming is, it's not happening because we're burning CO2 or burning oil.
Did you see the report?
Deforestation is a much worse problem.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I as a conservationist and a lover of the forest, that's a big issue, and we really don't have as many deciduous forests around the world as we used to because pine is one of the one of the more readily available sources that we're able to grab from. But did you see the the story? I don't know. I can't remember which nation it was that proposed this, but there were some people that were proposing an idea of us somehow sending some type of device into space to divert the Earth's the sun's rays from
Yes.
being able to
Yeah.
hit the Earth.
Yeah. Actually, oh, we're talking about something different. Yes. I have heard that too.
And they said, "Oh,
It
this
would
is the
be
way that
a,
we're going to stop the global warming is to stop the sun's rays from hitting the planet." Assuming that we could do that, do you not understand the danger that comes from tampering with the natural course of events that has to happen?
I do think so, but oh man, there was a name for it. It was a theorized idea. Oh, the one I'm thinking of is not about Earth. The one I was thinking of is using a system of mirrors to warm up Mars and melt the polar ice caps to help with terraforming. You're talking about something different, but it's a
No,
similar
I'm talking
idea.
about something different. They want to send some type of device into the sun to lessen the sun's rays from coming into Earth. Basically, um, they're trying to put up a barrier, so to speak, around the Earth that would be similar to what the Earth's ozone layer already does, which is filter the sun's harmful radiation when it enters into our atmosphere. And they're trying to put a bubble around the Earth to lessen the sun's effects on the planet, which I feel, if that was even plausible, would be unbelievably reckless and unbelievably dangerous. It would be
Yeah, it would
catastrophic.
probably destroy all life on Earth. You
Exactly.
know,
It would.
we're not very good at gauging what the consequences of things will be. We're great at coming up with ideas, but figuring out what that's going to end up doing, we're terrible at that.
Could you imagine what would happen if they decided to go through with that stupid idea and they
Oh,
wind up unleashing
we would have to not let them do it. We'd have to go kill them.
they wind up
I
unleashing
shouldn't
a,
have said
a
that,
damn
but
a damn solar flare to this planet?
well, that's going to happen anyway.
Eventually,
I'm
hopefully
talking
we'll
about
be dead
blocking out
before
the
then.
sun's rays and probably destroying photosynthesis.
Oh, I mean, if a solar flare hit the planet, I mean, it's pretty much it. At
Solar
least for the
flares
part
hit
that
the
they get,
planet all the time. It just depends on how bad it is.
at least the part that gets hit by one directly.
It all depends on how severe it is. Coronal mass ejections happen very frequently, usually that we don't even notice.
I also saw an article recently about a star that they discovered, uh, that the light from that star that we see every night, that star probably died billions of years ago, and we're just now being able to see his light finally. I found that quite
Well, that's the
interesting.
case with every star we see. You know, we're seeing that light as it was. You know, an interesting fact about that, whenever you look up at a star, let's say it's 100,000 light years away, and when you see it, the photons hit your eyes when you look at it, and but that light, those photons left that star 100,000 years ago. But the interesting factoid about that, which this actually goes into quantum physics somewhat, in order for that photon to hit your eye, it had to have known that you were looking at it 100,000 years ago in order your eye, it had to know that your eye was going to be there in order to hit your eye 100,000 years ago. The light could not have left that star. Those photons could not have left that star if they didn't have a destination in mind 100,000 years down the road. So obviously, time is relative. But that's an interesting little factoid there.
Yeah, very interesting. While we're still on on the topic of politics, before we move on to some more interesting and less doomsday type of scenarios, um, the potentiality of World War III has been riveting lately, especially with the tensions rising with China and the potential that Joe Biden could lose. Now he has a first primary challenger from the Democrat side. He has his first primary challenger for presidency of the United States. Do you think that we're inching closer? Because in my view, we're already in World War III. They just refuse to accept to admit it. Um, and do you think that we're going to move closer and closer to active combat before the 2024 elections?
I mean, I don't know, dude. It's so hard to tell. Like some days I think it's imminent, and some days I think, they're just playing a game. I don't know how it's going to turn out. It does seem like this is, you'll hear people that lived through the Cold War talking about the fear that a bomb was going to hit at any point, but this is actually closer than we were then.
Well, and
It
think
seems
about
that like it is, at least.
the unification of China and Russia at the moment, where China is now giving Russia more equipment to be able to combat and fight in Ukraine, and now Biden has basically forced us to take an active involvement in Ukraine because now we're sending them the tanks and I believe fighter planes. I could be wrong on the fighter planes part, but we are giving them tanks, which would require us to at least be there to train them on how to utilize our technology, which would put us in direct conflict. Not to mention that there are American soldiers that are over there in Ukraine right now that are pretty much mercenaries that have been hired out or roguely, which I think is unacceptable. Shouldn't be allowed within the United States where we're licensing out our troops as mercenaries. I think the Biden administration has really missed a gun on that one. But the issues now are if we are going to get to that point, let's examine what we know. The axis of powers at the moment looks to be Russia, China, and Iran. I won't necessarily say North Korea. North Korea is doing a lot of stuff, but they haven't done anything that is really indicative that they would be a major hitter or major player. If
They'll be on
anything,
that side. They just won't be really mentioned that
yeah,
much.
they'll be on that side. But I was gonna say, if anything, we'll have to watch them as a potential recurrence of Pearl Harbor. Not saying that they're going to come attack Pearl Harbor, but as if we weren't paying any attention to the Japanese in World War II, and until stuff hit the fan where we finally had to take notice of them. So I think it's important that we keep an eye on them, but I don't think they're going to be as big a player as Iran and China and Russia and potentially others that might have a bone to pick with the United States. Now here's the other big issue that's on the table right now. People are speculating about the use and potentiality of nuclear warfare. Do you think that that's going to come to pass? Because for me, I don't think it's going to come to pass, but I can't put it off the rule book because when you take a look at the generation that's running these wars right now, what do they have to lose? They aren't going to be here much longer anyway. So if they're going to ever decide to drop their nuclear bombs and nuclear arsenal, well, you haven't got much longer to do it anyway. So what do you think?
You know, actually, I also don't know really, but a lot of even a lot of our nuclear weapons, we haven't been doing tests in so long, and that goes for almost everybody. That if it's true for us, I would assume it's probably true for them too. A lot of our nuclear weapons probably don't even work anymore. But it doesn't matter. If a few of them work, that's bad enough. I think it's possible, but I really see nuclear weapons as more of a political bargaining tool rather than an actual weapon to be used in warfare. I mean, obviously somebody could do it, but somebody would have to get really desperate. I don't think we would be the first ones to do it.
I
We were
think the ones
before,
to
of
worry
course, but
about the most would be Iran. The Biden administration is pretty much giving them the green light to make their own nuclear ballistic missiles, and
well, if
we
that's the case, Iran would would use them on Israel. But at the same time, I still don't think they would do that. Israel is so small. Don't they want the Palestinians to have a place to live?
I have to disagree. I don't think that Iran would use it on Israel because of its close proximity to
They'd use
to
them on Saudi
Iran.
Arabia, actually. That's their
That might
biggest
be
enemy.
that might be one too. Do
I just don't think
uh
people would be throwing nukes around like that because no, people wouldn't be able to live anywhere.
speaking of Saudi Arabia, I feel it's going to be a wild card in this whole thing. I think they'd probably be kind of like America during World War II, kind of neutral factor supplying both sides until something directly gets them involved.
That's usually what they do. Although on paper they are allied with the West, they still fund the other side, you know, secretly, not so secretly.
So let's move on from the impending doom and gloom, because it gets kind of depressing talking about the potentiality of everybody being wiped out and less than 20 years from now. Uh, so we're moving on to some things. I had an article last week that I wanted to talk to you about, but I've lost it. Let me see if I can find it in my history here. Um because I think it was really tangential on us talking. We've been talking about various different states of higher consciousness and things in relationship to astral projection and other things of that nature. And I wanted to talk on this one. Let me see if I can find it here. Me
We should switch back
scrolling.
to Zoom, bro.
What's wrong with Zoom?
I said we should switch back to Zoom.
Or what's happening? Is something going on?
I just prefer Zoom.
Oh, well, I mean, if you want to switch back to Zoom, we can continue to use Zoom. I'll still use this service because I have to pay for this service anyway for all of the different streaming stuff that we have. But we can go back to Zoom. I the only the
So
only the only reason why I started using this one more was because it was saving me space. Zoom, those downloads for those recordings take up a lot of space, and with these, they take up space, but it's it's less. But we can go back to
that's
Zoom. I have no
why.
problem. Oh,
Well, you know how we can actually
the
solve that
quality
problem?
the quality on Zoom is just it's a much higher quality
You
download.
know, you know how we could solve that problem, or at least mitigate it, is by not doing 2 hour episodes, just keeping them shorter.
Well,
I don't know how much an
we
hour
have
is, but
we have been trying to get down to crack down on that. Yeah. But sometimes you just have a lot to say. Let's see here. Where the heck is that video? That video article. I'm trying to find it here. Oh, it's about Warren Buffett. Oh, where is it? I know
how
it's
much
got to
does the
be.
subscription cost for Zoom?
A Zoom right now for the subscription that I'm paying for is only around 16.99, and then I'm also paying for the 19.99 subscription here with Restream, which allows me to use Restream as something that I can use to stream to multiple services. And Zoom, I pay for that one because I'm tying it with Restream, so I pay for them both. So on net, I'm doing about a little under or a little over $200 a year for the two services in order to project the podcast to multiple platforms outside of the platforms that we already have the podcast on. Where the heck is it? Man, it was an interesting. Oh, here it is, right here. I'm going to share this article with you. I gotta say, I do not like Microsoft articles, MSN news articles, because they are so bare bones and have so little real information on them. But it it glances across me when I'm browsing in the mornings, looking at my news feeds, that I just find it interesting. And so I'm going to share my screen here so you can take a look at this article. I'm going to I don't need to share system audio. We're going to go to Microsoft tab, click that one, pop that on. So as you can see here, uh, I've got a guy says that he had a heart attack, went to hell in 2016, and this is what he saw. And now, and this is going on to some other stuff that I want to talk about. So he says a priest says he briefly, isn't that interesting? Because a priest says he briefly went to hell in 2016. He saw men walk and heard demons singing re most more positive than the hell in the also. And base for the heart visit. He took to TikTok to share details about this dramatic near death experience and a far from kind epiphany to expect what you could hear from somebody who was temporarily transported to the great beyond. And he said he wouldn't wish it upon his worst enemy. So let's see, what did he see exactly? It says his eyes were bulging out worse than that. He was wearing chains. He was like he was a hellhound, and there were demons holding the chains. Um, Near death experiences and venturing to hell. Do you think those types of things occur, or do you think some of these people are just making it up?
Well, there's plenty of evidence, actually peer reviewed, like scientific evidence, that near death experiences are absolutely real. You know, you don't have that number of people. This is really when it comes to any sort of phenomena, there's like thousands and thousands of people who've experienced it. All of them may be slightly different. They're not all making it up. That's ridiculous. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't know this person, and everybody's story. You know, I don't know why he would make it up. I've heard of most near death experiences don't include anything about hell, but some of them do, and some of the ones that do
Have
are very
you
graphic.
have you ever had any type of epiphany in any of, I'm not saying that you had a near death experience, but with with your past relationship with substance abuse, have you ever had any type of uh, of experience that shocked you to the point where you had to straighten things up?
Yeah, more than once. It never had a near death experience. Obviously, I mean, I think that would, if I had, you know, I would be talking about it. But um, I've had, well, first I'll talk about the stuff where I was still in my body. So, really, really terrible, bad, like awful panic attacks can get to the point where, like, I had one that was last year. I think I told you about this because I was just like out of commission for a long stretch of time. But it was the worst one I ever had. It got to the point where I actually felt like I was literally about to die. I even told my grandma, like, I'm about to die. Um, if I felt like now I know the reason why, because I was hyperventilating so bad, my brain was starved of oxygen. So my whole body, my face, my chest all started to feel like just go numb. And I felt it in my chest first. I thought it was like my heart stopping. Obviously, if that was the case, I probably would have passed out. But in that moment, I just knew that was it. Now, that's nothing like a near death experience, but the closest I've had to that would be out of body, astral projection. You can call it what you want. The first time it happened was involuntary.
As they
And
often
I
are.
knew, I knew about it. Well, they can be. Um, I knew about the phenomena before, but I didn't know if it was, I used to try to do it before that, years before that. But I still didn't even know if it was a real thing. I just heard people talking about it and I was like, well, I wonder if that's real. I wonder if you can actually do that. Because if it is, and you can actually do that, then to me, you can give me all these arguments about, the world beyond the material, the spiritual plane, the astral plane, whatever. You can say whatever you want. But until you experience it for yourself, you really don't know if it's real or not. But once you have an experience like that, that's experience, that's undeniable proof for the individual that you are not actually your body, even though it feels like that all the time. It feels like everything seems real. So it's kind of hard to even conceive that there could be anything beyond the physical because we're stuck here. And all this stuff, it feels solid and it feels so real. And it feels like I don't think any of us really deep down we all have the intuition that we don't think of ourselves as our body. We think of us as having a body. But once you actually are conscious that you are not in your body and you're floating away from it or you're just not in it, then okay, well, whatever I am, I'm not my body. But this was like 2015, the end of 2015. I was going through alcohol and Klonopin withdrawals at the same time, and I couldn't sleep at all. It felt like for probably about a month, it felt like it got better as it went on. But like the first week, it felt like I was the entire time just having a panic attack the whole week. It was I still went to work, but I took a no, I was just off for a couple of days. I still went to work, and the whole time I had that feeling in my stomach, like when you're sitting in a chair and you feel like it's about to tip over, but it's right on the verge and it could go either way. That feeling
Yeah.
that in your stomach, that's how I felt the whole time, like I was about to fall. I was in a chair that was about to fall, but I didn't know if it was going to fall or not. So stuck there in the middle. But I'm laying on the couch, just laying there awake. My heart's pounding, my blood pressure's sky high, trying to sleep. And then at some point during the night, I decided to get up and walk. I don't know. I might have been thinking I was going to the bathroom or something. So I got up and I walked through the living room, past the dining room table. This is the old house we lived in. You went there. You on graduation day, you were there.
Yeah, I remember.
And so there's an island in the middle of the kitchen, and there's a dining room table sitting right there. And I walked between them. And as I turned to go back down the hallway, I turned and looked at the front door. I think I told you this story once before. And I
Yeah.
looked at the front door, and it was like floating. It was hovering above the ground, flipped around backward, just like floating there like this. And at that point, I was like, okay, there's something wrong here. And then suddenly, I'm on the couch again. I get up and I realize, holy crap, and I actually never got up. But it felt exactly like it felt like I was walking in my physical body. I couldn't tell the difference.
Well, in your astral projection experiences, have
That was,
you ever have you
it
ever
happened more than once
encountered
in the same night.
or seen other entities,
Yeah.
hostile or otherwise, in the while you were doing it?
Yes. That same night. I didn't, it happened to me involuntarily that night 2 or 3 times. And the second time, I didn't get up. I just kept laying there. And it happened again. And I didn't even realize it happened the second time. It felt again like I just got up in my physical body. And I saw, I didn't go into the kitchen this time. I stayed in that room I was in, the den or the living room. And I got up again and I looked over at the entertainment center. And there was a little black cat on the ground. And he was going like, like a cat, like just like it looked like a regular black cat. And it scared me so bad. I was like, fuck you, get away from me. And then I got up again. Now, the third time it happened, same thing. I didn't even know, I didn't realize it happened until it was over. Felt like I got up again. This time, I was standing by the couch and I looked over by the back door. and there was this old man standing there. This old kind of plump guy. He had like 19th century garb on, 18th century clothes. Like a colonist or whatever, like Benjamin
And
Franklin. But he didn't look like Benjamin
he
Franklin.
looked just like Alexander Hamilton.
His clothes, no, his I wasn't thinking though he looks like somebody. This is just what I remember. Like he was wearing like old, like 19th century clothing, but it looked old and tattered. And he was holding this book. It was a pretty big book, and it also was like old looking and yellowed pages, like crackly or whatever. And he had circular spectacles on, and he was looking down at the book like he was reading. And he looked up from his glasses like this, like that, at me with this disapproving look, like. And I did the same thing. I was like, "Fuck you, get away from me!" And then
Now you surprised me. Most people would say he looked up at me with his glasses, but you said spectacles,
yeah,
which is
that's what I was thinking of.
a term I haven't heard in a long time, actually.
Yeah, they were spectacles. They were those circle ones, the old ones. That's the first time that But ever since then, I've been able to do it by choice when I'm in sleep paralysis, which is something I experience every night pretty much. So as soon as I feel that I know I'm in sleep paralysis, as soon as I have the intention to get out of my body, the process begins. And then a few seconds later, I pop right out. But I don't have very good control over my astral body. It's almost like sometimes I can decide where I want to go, but other times
You're just blowing
I
in the
just end
wind.
up floating in a certain direction and I can't stop it. And a lot of times, sometimes I'll pop out and I can't see anything. My vision's just completely dark. And sometimes it's just super cloudy. I can barely see. But sometimes, very, very few times, can I see very crystal clear. But sometimes I can. I just don't have very good control of it yet.
You know, the interesting thing about astral bodies and astral projection is, if you're a spiritual man, if you're a Christian person, the idea and concept of it is not beyond belief. But the interesting thing about it is if you are of that belief, there's a certain level of practice and exercise that has to be done. It's just like training any other muscles within a person's body, except you're training your your true self, so to speak. Because as you know, our bodies are just our vessels containing
I
our
call it
true
my
form.
avatar.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's an avatar that's containing our true form, and so training your true form to be able to do things outside of its vessel, outside of its retainer, is a practice in itself, and it's
Yeah.
quite difficult. I don't think most people will ever be able to fully
Well,
master it.
that's why psi phenomena are not more common. Most of the time when it happens to people, it's involuntary. But remote viewing was used extensively by the CIA and to great success. I wouldn't be surprised if they're still doing it and it's just classified. But some of these people have great success records when it comes to spying by remote viewing. It's 100% real. And all it takes is a little bit of research to learn this. But you can do all the research you want until you actually experience something like that. You don't know if it's real or not. But once
Yeah,
once you do, then you know. It's not a belief. You just know it.
yeah. You know, like you, I've had my fair share of experiences. I never will forget the my encounters with the shadow people. It's something that you don't forget quite easily, especially since there were
No.
five of them sitting around my bed, uh, of various different shapes and sizes. And you when you're able to have those types of experiences, they do change you in the way that you see uh, things and see the world around you. I remember it. I also remember the vision. I've said this story many times. The vision that I had when I was at the altar in church,
Yeah.
and
The thing with the weird horns.
yeah, it is still burned into my eyelids. I can still see the same thing from day. And this was in the fifth grade, so this is during Hurricane Katrina. I had this vision. while we were out of school during that particular period of time, and uh, for like 3 months, every time I closed my eyes, that's all I could see. It was burned into the back of my eyes, and you know how sometimes you would try to close your eyes to run away from the images in your head, and then me, I would close my eyes, but then the light would be peeking through my eyelids. So instead of seeing black, I would see red, and it would just bring back a flash of those memories all over again because there was massive undertones of gray and the most brilliant crimson, red or orange flame that you could have ever imagined. Um, but some the instances like that are terrifying as hell, but they're so fascinating. You want to learn more, but you don't want to interact with any of these things.
Yeah,
you
that
you
that's
want
that is one thing I think about a lot. Like, wouldn't it be so cool to, get abducted by extraterrestrials? But then you listen to some of these people's stories and it ruined their life. I mean, it
like
wouldn't be cool.
for
It'd be
me like
terrifying.
I find it so fascinating that I was able to have those encounters with those shadow creatures. I don't know what they are. I find it interesting that I was able to see what to me was clearly a vision of the complete obliteration of this planet and the reformation of a new one. Um, but what scared the hell out of me was the idea of not knowing what these entities were and not knowing what their motive was. If I knew what their motive
Yeah,
was, I would happily have the encounter again. But I have no idea what they wanted. And what makes it so much more terrifying when it's these shadow individuals, and really when it's these individuals that I've seen in my visions and my projections, is the inability to see their face at all, to see any type of facial reaction. Because when you see somebody's face, you're able to really gain an idea of intent and motive.
yeah,
And when you can't see face, it's just a mystery, and you have to be on guard at all time. What makes it so much more dangerous is the fact that there were five of them. When I was younger, and that's why I told you this before. I believe that Hurricane Katrina was an absolutely evil storm that brought evil to here because I never saw any of this stuff until Hurricane Katrina, and they were in my bedroom. My folks saw things in the house after Katrina. My uncle said he saw an elderly couple sitting behind my bedroom door because he used to sleep in my room and I slept in the other room.
did I tell
During
you about the? I told you about the witch laughing in the middle of the night, 3
Yeah,
a.m.
my
Yes,
brother
there
claims my
sounded like
brother
that.
claims he saw a vampire in the closet. I don't, I don't know how much that was, but we were young. But I do distinctively remember those five shadow people. And the fact that there were that many of them, and the fact that my mother encountered a shadow entity. I won't call it a shadow person because what she saw wasn't a shadow person, it was a shadow entity. Because when she was younger, her and my TT Sherry, uh, they were messing around with Ouija boards when they were younger. I was about 2 years old. My brother was just born, and I told you the story before, where she was doing this, and she had these two people were in the house, one older guy and one younger kid they were in overalls, and the kid used to draw on the wall, and my mother used to think it's my brother that was doing it, and I spent most of my time at my granny's house. But this one particular night, we were all in the house at the same time. My brother's father was not at home at the time. I think he was at work or in jail at the time. And uh this one particular night, the guy the big guy was sitting right next to mother, and the kid was sitting on the edge of the bed, and the big guy was shaking mother furiously, telling her to get up out of the bed. And as soon as she got up, the big guy pointed to the hallway, and then he left. And when mother went out to the hallway, she looked behind her, and she saw in the hallway a massive shadow, a massive shadow entity. It wasn't in the form of a person. It was like an apparition, but it was like a massive shadow evil. You know what I mean? Like just a mass of energy that took the form of a shadow that was distinct within the darkness. And mother got me and my brother, and she left out of there. And that entity followed her from place to place wherever she went for years. Why it stopped following her, I don't know. I don't know how it happened, but I do know that after hearing those stories from mother when I was younger, and then having these shadow entities surrounding my bed, it made me very very alarmed, especially because I would turn the light on, the entities would disappear, and they would come back after the lights were off. They wouldn't come back immediately. They come back after several minutes of time had gone by. And every night that they came back, they would get closer and closer to the bed. And I'm sitting there like, oh, what am I supposed to do? And then what made it worse? This was during Katrina. We didn't have any lights. We didn't have lights for 3 months. So I'm stuck with these entities in this room for 3 months, and we can't keep the kerosene lantern on all night because you burn the house down. And so I'm stuck with these entities all night for 3 months, getting closer and closer. So eventually, my grandmother decided to have the pastor come and bless the house and dispel it. And uh, I never did see those entities again. But you know what? My grandmother moved me to a different bedroom, so I didn't stay in the same bedroom. So I had no idea whether or not they were still in the house at all because I was in a different bedroom. She moved me to the bedroom that had the largest windows in the house. So even at nighttime, it was never dark in the room because the street lights shone through the giant windows in the house. And then from that day forward, I started sleeping with my TV on. It was always on the aux channel. You know how the old Sylvania TVs have the aux channel.
Yeah,
Uh,
the blue.
yeah, well, mine was black, but it had blue letters that said aux. But the blue shined so brightly that it lit up the room. So I started sleeping with that. So I never did see those entities again, but I did experience other entities and other instances of seeing things outside of those particular moments. I remember one particular time I had a projection, and I don't know where I was going. I can't remember specifics, but I do remember that while I was going there, it was almost as if I was on an it was almost as if I was on a not an escalator, but an assembly belt. Like I was on an assembly belt that was just moving me forward, and as I was just being propelled forward, I couldn't stop. I was seeing all of these different entities, and they were fully formed humanoid. Some of them looked like they were wearing clothes, and you could just see them, but I couldn't stop to talk to any of them. I don't know that I would. Well, don't know that I would have wanted to, but you could see them clearly as plain as day. So I remember one of them was wearing a brown tattered robe, looked like with a hood, and it had a hood on it that was covered over, and he or she, I don't know what it was, but he or she was just kind of looking down. Had his arms crossed, looking down. Was never did take a look up to take a look at me. And I was having a conversation last week after Sunday school with one of our members, and she and I were talking, and you know what makes a bigger believer out of people like me is when you have these type of experiences, you have to wonder just the type of spiritual warfare that's happening outside of our vision, and the protection that we have from God, the protection that we have, because you know as well as I do that when you astral project, that is the most dangerous time that you can be, not only for your true self but for your vessel, because you don't know what is waiting to enter that vessel while you're not in it. And
I
when you
actually
get back
don't
in it,
think that I don't know what I think about other things being able to enter your body like that. I I mean your body is connected to you in such a way that you can't, as soon as you decide to go back into your body, you're instantly there.
Yeah, but who's to say that you're the one in control once you're in there? I mean, you know as well as I do the story of Legion and the
I know,
amount
but
of
I think
spirits that were
demonic
in
possession
there.
is a different thing.
I
I
don't
don't
know
think
that I
that guy
think
was
he's.
honestly, I don't really know I mean, I know I don't think it's as common as a lot of people think that it is, like true demonic possession.
I think a lot of people try to blame demonic possession for things that they do. They say that alcoholism is a demonic possession. I don't believe in that. Uh,
That's not true possession.
but they try to pass the blame on other things to exempt themselves from responsibility of their actions and choices. That's at least that's
If
my
someone is
perspective.
truly demonically possessed, everyone will know something is wrong. And it's not just a regular kind of something wrong. It's very, very recognizable that this is not a normal ailment, that something else is going on here. And that's why I say it's not that common. It's actually pretty rare for it to get to that point. And you actually have to get an exorcist or something. The Catholic Church, the way that they do exorcisms is very meticulous. It's like they go through every other possibility of what could be wrong before they determine that, okay, this is true demonic possession.
What I found so interesting about the Catholic Church's approach to those things is uh, the manner in which they do it is it's copied almost exactly from Solomon. When Solomon conquered all the spirits of hell, and it's very interesting because demonology has a lot more history and um and levels to it than genealogy has. We know a lot more about demonology than we do angenealogy. Angenealogy is much more mysterious to us than demonology is, and I just find that relatively interesting.
That's
That
because demons, as well as we call them demons,
some of them are just
call
fallen
them whatever
angels.
else you want. I mean, in my opinion, demons and fallen angels are exactly the same thing. But I have heard some say fallen angels are actually that's the proper term to describe the celestial entities that chose to
The Watchers.
interfere with the world, interfere directly with the terrestrial plane, and a demon is basically an earthbound spirit without an avatar, like a ghost
A
or whatever.
corrupted
But
a
something
corrupted lesser spirit.
something something celestial or spiritual or astral that's bound to the physical plane without a physical body. I don't know, but in my opinion, they're synonyms. Maybe they're not. It's really just terms that we came up with anyway to describe a
True.
phenomenon. But um, the reason why we know so much more about the study of the dark arts is because they basically that spirit that side of things, the dark side or demons, they are the ones who choose to come in and violate our free will and interfere. Angels, I don't like to use the term angels, but for this argument, that's what I'm going to say. And God, they don't directly interfere without permission, basically, without you deciding that you want their help. They're not just going to, they're a lot more elusive because they don't directly interfere like that unless, you have to put in something too. And it's just not that easy
I
as
also
like the
think
dark
the
arts.
I also think that the dark arts, um, I think they've left behind a bigger blueprint of how to unleash them, whereas angelic
Yeah, that's
spirits
because
they did not.
that's because of the reason I just said. They they're the ones who will come in and violate your free will and give you what you want.
Well, see, what I mean by that is, it's like, for example, what Solomon did was he summoned every single demon out of hell. He summoned even demons as powerful as Asmodeus and Astaroth out of hell. But when you're talking about angelic spirits, the idea of being able to summon one of them and what it takes in many cultures is astronomically more than it takes to do that for a demonic entity. And again, I
You know,
think you're
you
correct too
remember,
that angels don't have a reason to get involved because they already have a duty. They already have a duty to protect you beyond your own knowledge. They already have a duty. They don't have a reason to be revealed or seen unless specifically told by God.
you remember that story um, where this is the day before a big battle, a day before the big battle in which he is killed, where Saul goes to the Witch of Endor because he's worried about the battle, he's stressed out, he's anxious about it, and he wants to know ahead of time. This is by the point that he's already pretty much cut himself off from God entirely. And he goes to the Witch of Endor, and because he wants an answer, he wants to know what's going to happen in this battle. He's worried about dying. And she actually ends up conjuring Samuel, the spirit, the ghost of Samuel. And the way that she reacts to it makes it seem like she was actually surprised that it worked. But anyway, this is a witch. She conjures Samuel, and Samuel seems like he's pretty perturbed by this. Like, why did you disturb me? But the way that he says it is like, if you would have just waited, we would have been able to talk about this tomorrow. Basically,
You'd be
indirectly
dead.
saying that, yeah, you're going to die. That was always a curious little story that they put in there, that was written in there.
You know,
Interesting.
you find interesting tidbits of knowledge like that all of the time throughout any of the texts associated with the Bible, really associated with most mythologies in general. You find interesting tidbits of knowledge and stuff that are tossed around there. But that brings me back to this question because we're going to wrap this up at an hour 30 minutes. So we only got about 10 or 13 minutes left. Um, about the history of these entities. You mentioned the Illuminati, and you know that this modern age of people believe that the Illuminati and the Anunnaki are the same beings. Of course, you know as well as I do that the Anunnaki are the name of the pantheon of the Mesopotamian gods, the lords of Uruk. But uh, what
I
is
don't know
your
how they got, conflated. The Illuminati has nothing to do with the Anunnaki
I
at
have no
all.
idea either. But what is your opinion of the idea that the deities of the Mesopotamians, of the ancient Egyptians, the Egyptians before the ancient Egyptians, that their deities are based off of some perhaps extraterrestrial visitor?
I used to think that was ridiculous, but now I'm beginning to think there actually could be something to that, because it's not just the Sumerians, but there's cultures all over the world, especially Native American cultures, that say their ancestors were the star people. Um, and the way that the Anunnaki are written about seems like, obviously, it seems very childish. In mythological terms, it seems like what you would expect people restarting after a cataclysm, after this, restarting back at the Stone Age with their primitive frames of reference. It seems like that's how they might describe uh, a super advanced race that left them here, basically abandoned them here. Um, I don't know. It could be. With the recent revelations when it comes to the UFO phenomena, and I'm not talking about anything you're going to see in the mainstream news. This is the kind of stuff you have to seek out. But if you want to, the information is there. Basically, there's enough evidence. If you go look for it, you'll find it. There's mountains of evidence that there is another intelligent species other than humans here. And there
And whether or
are,
not they came from beyond the stars or that they
yeah,
were
well, we don't
already
know that,
here
but
themselves is
basically the best
irrelevant.
sources for this are not people, and most people in the government don't actually. It's only very select people that actually have been read in on these, like top secrets. But enough whistleblowers have come out to basically confirm that we don't know where they're from. The vehicles that they have, they appear to break the laws of physics. They are gravity. They have gravity propulsion systems that basically make space and time completely irrelevant. And there's reverse engineering projects going on right now at certain locations, that certain elements of the government. But a lot of these people are not explicitly government. They're going to be people like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, because it's a lot easier to keep secrets within a private business than it is the government. So, of course, but they're deeply affiliated with the government. They've got reverse engineering that's been going on, attempting to reverse engineer these vehicles for an extended period of time, and they've had limited communication with them. But
Speaking
that is true.
of
That
these
being said,
vehicles,
I do think they've been here for a long time. But that being said, I do think that in light of recent revelations that it is more plausible that maybe we were seeded here by, you know, who knows? I don't know.
speaking
But
of these vehicles, um, do you know what strikes me about it? You know, the idea of the vehicles, I still haven't gotten to the part of believing in in these vehicles,
okay,
but
I can send you some
but
material that will convince
in
you.
this is where I'm going with this. If these vehicles are from outside of the Earth, from outside of the planet, I I need to be able to grasp what potential energy source could they have that could allow them to travel the distance in which they would have to travel to get here, and more specifically, at what rate of speed can their bodies do it? Because you and I mentioned have talked before about the idea of molecular dispersion, to be able to travel to and from planets as something that these beings could possibly use, where they have to break down their molecules so that they could travel at a speed faster than what a organic being can actually do without destroying their physical body. But if they're making these vehicles, which obviously I think if their technology is more advanced than ours, I think they would have to have some way to have an artificial gravity to regulate those things. But what energy source is there that we can think of that is sufficient to power something that could get you to travel for such a long period of time, assuming that they would have to travel at the same rate of speed that our uh, interstellar vehicles can.
That's why I say they appear to break the laws of physics as we know them. Because if the craft has its own gravity level, nothing can actually penetrate it. Like you'd be pretty much invincible. But I have seen some stuff that's come out, like people, Lou Elizondo, for instance, he used to be the head of ATIP, which was the most recent iteration of the government's investigation into this sort of thing. That electromagnetic pulse directed energy weapons might actually be able to pop that gravity bubble, and maybe that has what has caused the crashes, like at Roswell, for instance, and perhaps it was on purpose.
Well, we
But
do know that
if they can
electromagnetic
break the
pulses
laws
are
of
the most
physics as we
dangerous thing
know
for
them,
us.
then that means that the laws of physics as we know them are breakable. And
Or as you said last time we did a show together, that it's entirely possible that our limited understanding of the laws of physics are just that, limited and incomplete, that they are not breaking the laws of physics but taking advantage of laws of physics that we have not yet discovered.
or they're not laws as we know them. We think they are, but they're not absolute. That's clearly the case. They're not absolute. Time is relative, space is relative. You know, we just think of it that way. They're not actually, they don't appear to actually be traveling through physical space as we experience it. because if you see some of these, they move so fast. It's almost like they're one spot, then they're somewhere else. And some of these are military videos, but
You
a lot
know,
of times they'll just be moving in a way that it's just it's inconceivable for any kind of human understanding.
it kind of reminds me of some of the characters that I write in my stories and in my books. There's a skill in one of my in my books that it's a conceptual based skill where they they aren't necessarily moving faster than the human eye can see. They aren't moving faster than light, but the skill is called an instant step, and it's a ability that breaks the laws of physics by being a conceptual type of movement, where the instant step is I have a vision as to where I want to be, and when I step, the laws of reality break and just kind of shift everything to be that when I put my foot down, the next step that I'm in the position that I want it to be in. So I'm not moving fast at all. I'm just moving the laws of reality and laws of physics around me to, and it makes it seem as though I'm doing the impossible when all I'm doing is taking a step.
Yeah, well, when you start, the reason why they can't marry quantum physics, general relativity, is because, well, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, it's because reality is not physical as they're trying to figure out. They'll never be able to figure out a way to create a theory of everything that would be able to connect those two because they're starting from the wrong place. And if you start with a theory of everything, if you start from mind, if you start from consciousness as being the primal force and the only thing that's fundamental, it solves all of those discrepancies. And it also accounts for ESP, psychic phenomena. It accounts for ghosts. It accounts for everything paranormal. It accounts for perhaps what a more advanced species would probably be more attuned to their psychic abilities and be able to use that in a way
I
that
don't.
we don't think
T-
is
t-
possible.
Tell me if you agree with this theory, because my theory between the relationship between time, space, and matter, and the other fundamental forces are that time and space are are parallel. They move at the same wavelength, at the same frequency, and they are constant. But they run perpendicularly to matter and the things that have to follow the rules, so to speak, of space and time. Everything that's made of matter has to follow the rules set by these two constant measures, time and space. Everything that we know is measured against time and space. All forms of matter have to run perpendicular to these constant forces.
I don't think of time as really being a thing as we think of. I mean, it's a human concept, but I don't think time is not fundamental. The only time is just in order for things to happen. Like I think time is really just a measure of change and the ability of physical things to change. Because if things can't change, then the universe stays static. But as we measure the change of things over time, like each moment becomes a new save state for the universe.
An
So,
interesting theory.
which is why
Interesting theory.
nothing it's actually impossible. Well, it might not be impossible, but I forgot what I was going to say.
No, I thought you were about to start talking about time travel.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. I mean, it kind of related, but that's not what I was going to talk about. Oh, two moments don't ever in linear time as we experience it. Nothing can actually be repeated ever because even if you can actually, you'll never be here again. Well, of course, locally you can come back to the same spot and sit in the same chair, but you're not actually in the same spot because Earth is moving around the sun and the sun is moving around the galactic center, and the galactic center is moving closer to the great attractor at the center of the Laniakea supercluster. So you're never actually going to be in the same spot twice ever.
which is true. But that's the reason why I say that time and space have to be constant forces, because those are the only things that are true enough for us to be able to actually measure things against. And now space is even more confusing than time, in my in my opinion. So, because we relegate many things to space, such as gravity and other things related to that, but space space in its own thing as its own force is relatively vague and unexplainable.
It seems
If we
like
were to use
it's,
space as its own term, it's just void, emptiness, where everything is, where matter can
it's the
fill.
background for everything. It's the background that, when trying to think about what space is, it's kind of mind bending because it's so hard to conceive. How could, if there was no
I
space,
but
then there couldn't be anything, right? Except
but you know
mind.
what? I have to think that space has to be something that is also physical, because if it wasn't, how could all of these things exist within space
It is a
without going
physical,
anywhere?
it's a physical substrate. It's the
You know what?
substrate by which all other physical things must,
That is a good
like, think of it
analogy.
this way. Think of it this way. The ocean is composed of water molecules, but a wave moves through the ocean as the water. The ocean is actually not a thing. Okay, the water is a thing, but the ocean is not. It's a concept that we use, but the ocean is actually the physical substrate which the water moves through. You think of it that way. Space is basically that for physical things.
See, I was thinking more on the lines that when you talked about substrate, that space itself was more or less like a substrate or foundation for which everything can bloom from. For we use substrates to create our gardens and things of that nature. So I was more on the idea of the theory that space is more of a metaphysical substrate that everything is forced to exist in, because it can't take root anywhere else.
I don't I don't see space as metaphysical. That's space is the physical manifestation of the arena that exists in the mind of God for all these things to take place. I honestly, I'm philosophical idealist. I believe that physical things as such don't actually have any existence in and of themselves, and quantum physics suggests that too. But it's more like it's a virtual reality arena that's existing in the mind of God, of which we are all connected to, a small part of. But the only thing that truly has any existence in and of itself is the primordial conscious mind, or God. And everything else is an outgrowth of that, of Him.
Well, these are all very interesting theories, but with that, we are running overtime. So let's go ahead and get things done here. So I want to thank you again for coming with me, Rhett. We have wonderful conversations, always great conversations. Um, I want to close on on 2 points and make it quick, 30 seconds. Uh, what are your predictions for for the Democrats and their primary challenges to Joe Biden, if there are any more than the one that we have? And do you think Biden will run? Do you think he'll be their candidate? And then number two, I want to know, what is your scenario for the potential of World War III, or the potential to avoid World War III?
Yeah, I think Biden's, I mean, he basically said as much, right? Unless something terrible happens, he's running, and he will be their nominee, because how are they going to? That's what it looks like to me right now. I'm not going to say any more about that because I really don't know. And what was the second thing? World War
Second
Three?
one
Dude,
is,
I don't
what
know. I
is
honestly feel like humanity as a whole, we're at a fork in the road, and we have to decide which path we're going to take. And one path uh, leads to the parasitic divergence, as Chris Langan likes to call it. The parasitic divergence is where people with vast amounts of money and wealth and resources start getting the idea that they're elite and basically ultimately end up becoming a parasitic subspecies of Homo sapiens, with the rest of us being their host. And if that happens, that'll be the technological singularity where we'll basically, in the end, down that road, we will not pass through the great filter and we will die being a one planet species. The second path is the path where we have to get rid of them. And World War III could happen on either path. It actually could be the split, but I'm really 50-50 on World War III. I don't. There's two possibilities to me when it comes to World War III as well. All these different branching paths.
Oh, then we'll have to have a greater
One of them is that
conversation about that next week.
warfare will ultimately take on a different form than it has in the past and be primarily cyber. And the second path is nuclear Armageddon. So that's it on that.
You know, I'm in the same kind. I'm in the same avenue. I do think that Biden is going to be the nominee. When I look at we had this problem earlier in the show last season, trying to figure out who the Republicans can run for 2020 for 2024 outside of Donald Trump, and now obviously DeSantis is one of the upcoming numbers that have been spewed upon,
I
and
don't know
we were
why people
having
keep trying to
trouble.
make him.
Well, and
He
we were
hasn't even
having
said he was going to
trouble
run.
making the determination of who could do it. Now I'm seeing the same problem on the Democrat side. You know, I don't think Bernie's going to run again, and so who other than Joe is going to do it because uh, all of the potential front runners that would have done it, Pete Buttigieg, nobody likes him because of his horrible performance as transportation secretary. Kamala Harris is even more unlikable than she was when she dropped out of the primary without even getting 1% of the primary vote for the Democrats. Uh, Hillary Clinton, she said that she's not going to run, but I think she's coming back.
Huh.
If she, if she doesn't,
That's what Dick Morris keeps saying.
you know, who do they have? I mean, what Gavin Newsom, uh,
Yeah,
Andrew Cuomo?
I could actually see Gavin Newsom being their real. You know why? Because he's got the look, but he's also basically a mannequin, so they can possess him.
America's version of Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, you know what? What I think of when I see Newsom, American Psycho.
And on with World War Three, I'm also 50-50. I think that it can be avoided, but the only way to avoid it is to supplant the World Economic Forum.
The only way we can avoid it, the best way, is if we actually hit the omega point, a quickening of human consciousness where there's this global worldwide awakening. And we all realize who we are and our connection to God and our destiny.
That's not
And
going
that
to
will
happen.
allow us to pass through the great filter. That's actually not something I came up with. There
That's
was
not going to
I
happen
could send
though.
you the information on that. Not with that attitude. Yeah, all this stuff, I'm serious about this. All this stuff that we talk about doom and gloom, none of this is set in stone or predetermined. We actually have a we actually have a choice in the matter. But if things get too bad, God will wipe us out. But if we don't try to stop it and if we don't try to prevent it, he might not be able to tell us apart from the mass. So we better that's my
Well, we have to
philosophy on
do.
it.
We can't sit by and do anything.
If we don't try and warn people, then the ultimate catastrophe will come.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's part of the whole point of doing what we do. We can't sit by and just do nothing. But I, I, I see. For me, I think the more realistic road is to remove the present threat, and the present threat, in my opinion, is is
Parasitic
not is not
diversion.
Ru- is not well, as you call it. It's not Russia. It's not China. I mean, they're threats, but they aren't the overarching threat. The overarching threat are these people, like you said, the George Soroses, the Bill Gates, these people that
Yeah.
are
If we don't get rid of them, they
forcing
will
these
drag us all to
problems.
perdition.
I mean, their utopia they told us this. Their utopia will require that billions of us die.
You know what? They really ultimately their goal is immortality. But they're going to be there if they get it their way. First of all, they've never even proven that it's even possible to do it via computers, but they'd be essentially bound to the physical plane in a computer forever. That's that's artificial immortality. They don't want to do it the right way. They
And
want to
that's
do it their way.
unfunctional immortality. You know, I don't want to make this conversation longer than it has to be, but you know, I had this conversation last week after Sunday school, and we were talking, and I was talking about how our concept of mortality and immortality have changed, you and ours. I've always wanted to live forever because I want to be able to spend all that time learning everything that there is to learn that I find interesting. But even in all of that stuff, because I can't go backwards in time. If I live forever, I still wouldn't know everything because I won't be able to be everywhere at any one point to be able to experience things. I can't experience stuff that's already transpired and passed over. And so being able to move beyond
Well, sir,
this shell and to be
you
immortal in the actual real sense of it, I can learn from the master.
yeah. Yeah, I was going to say you can live forever, just not as DeAndre Pace.
Yeah, I would much rather live forever at the foot of the master, learning everything that he has to tell me.
I would
That
yeah,
that would
I
be
wouldn't
true
want to live
heaven for me.
forever. I wouldn't want to live forever being earthbound.
Oh, of course not.
Anyway, we've gone on too long
Yeah.
anyway. We
Well,
could
we
go
have
on forever with this.
well, next week we'll have a deeper discussion about this. But again, I want to thank my co-host Rhett for joining me here today on the fourth episode of season 5 of the Story of America with Payson Williams. Well, the title is still in progress. Also,
We
please,
really got to
if
we got to have one by next episode. I'm serious
or we're going to
but
have to have some
I don't
meetings.
want it to be I don't want the title to be something political related. I want it to be more, you know,
Well, we'll talk about that
something
after I
deeper,
end
something
this.
heavier.
We'll talk about that after I end the stream. But everyone, please, if you would, follow us on Facebook at Story of America PW or at facebook.com/S America PW. I'll put it up on the screen now. Also, follow our content on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Breaker Audio, Amazon Podcasts, anywhere and everywhere, including YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. I've already said that, and Instagram. And we're on Rumble. We got to get that Rumble stuff set up. Uh, and I'm also going to do a Twitch thing too. I'm going to try to do that stuff. But we got a lot of different avenues, so follow us there. Any click helps because that helps bring in the money for the ad revenue. And we'll see you guys next week, Saturday night next week, 7 o'clock. Yeah, do you have any objections to 7 o'clock, Rhett? Or you're going to be able to do that at 7? So if everything goes accordingly, we'll be back 7 o'clock next week on Saturday night.